for America's Future. I'm sitting next to Mr. Paul J. from Real News Networks. How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
Man, you have been walking around these facilities, these very quote-unquote progressive facilities, with an article that you wrote in defense of Helen Thomas. We are just getting word that, well, in my opinion, she was forced to resign. What's your take on all this? Because this is causing quite a buzz.
Well, I think what's happened to her is atrocious. She's one of the few people in American mainstream media who's had the courage over 50 years to speak about U.S. policy towards Israel. She's asked questions in the White House press rooms like to President Obama, asking who has nuclear weapons in the Middle East, something he didn't want to answer, and obviously the supposedly secret weapons that everybody knows Israel has. There's been a tremendous ganging up, but let's look at what she actually said. She's sitting out, I guess, in a park somewhere. I don't know the exact situation. Somebody she doesn't know sticks a video camera in front of her face and says anything to say about Israel. And of course, we're just days after at least 9 and perhaps more activists were killed by Israeli commandos on an aid ship in international waters. So it's not surprising that she's rather emotional in her response to the question. And she says it's time for, asked about Israel, it's time for them to get out of Palestine, which means Israel. The question wasn't what do you think of Jews, but I suppose that's what she meant. Um, but she particularly refers to German, Polish, and American. Should go back to where they came from. Now, part of the outrage that we're hearing is how could she dare say that these people should go back to Germany and Poland, the places that killed them, except everyone knows today's Germany is not Germany of Hitler. So, in fact, it wouldn't surprise me. There's a lot of unemployed Israelis right now that if you offer them the same deal that you're giving settlers, in other words, go back to Germany, we'll give you a house and a job. I'd like to see how long the lineups are to go precisely to Germany. And let's also talk about why so many Jews went to Palestine right after World War II. And it's because the United States, Canada, and England wouldn't let Jews in. The Jewish quota that prevented Jewish immigration to North America and England was not relaxed, even after it became clear how many Jews had died in concentration camp ovens. And in fact, there was and another important piece of it. It was Zionist organizations in the United States that did not lobby to relax immigration quotas so Jews could get into the United States. They lobbied so that Jews could go to Palestine because their objective was to establish a state, not the relief of the refugees sitting in camps in Europe.
Right. Now, I had a discussion about this morning, and somebody said that it was atrocious for her to suggest that they go back. And, and the point that was being made is like where they're going to go. This is their home. And if I remember correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Uganda was a place that they were considering setting up, the state in 1948. So it wasn't really this religious significant place that people could talk about when they were considering a number of spots.
Yeah, I think that was in consideration, but I don't think it would be correct to say it wasn't of religious significance. Jerusalem has been in the prayers of Jews for centuries and centuries, and there's no question Jerusalem had symbolic resonance, importance to Jews. But when Jews emigrated, they didn't go to Palestine on the whole. When they could, they went to America and they went to other countries.
Well, that's what I was meaning, that if they had set it up in Uganda, we would have had people there,
Well,
and not necessarily.
I don't know how serious. I know Uganda was mentioned around the time of the Balfour Declaration. I don't know how serious it was. I don't think it's that Jews didn't go to Palestine. Partly because it had significance to them. Certainly many Jews went there because they were escaping persecution. The important point is the persecution they were escaping was not being committed by Palestinians. It was mostly by Europeans. And so the issue is, why are Palestinians paying the price for European and North American racism, if you want to talk about the history? But you can't deny there is a connection between Jews and that land. There were thousands and thousands of Jews living there before 1948. But the status of the pre-1948 Jews is a different question than Jews that were forced there after the war, primarily because other countries wouldn't take them. And it's understandable why Jews didn't, after the war, want to stay in Germany and Poland. quite a different question of Germany and Poland today. But all that being said, I mean, I don't agree with what Helen said. I don't think Jews should leave, and I don't think. But I think most importantly, I just came back from the Middle East, and I was in the West Bank, and I was in Ramallah, and I interviewed one of the leaders of Hamas, and I did not hear from anybody. I shouldn't say from anybody. That's an exaggeration. Almost everyone I talked to said the issue isn't Jews should leave. The issue is Palestinians must have their rights. And if you ask what that means concretely, they would like one democratic state that everybody lives in equally. I, yes, I heard from some Palestinians, and the Palestinians I heard from were people who had been sitting in refugee camps for over 60 years. Yes, some of them said all the Jews should get out. Although even there, it's very interesting. They made it specific. It was all the Jews that came after 1948 should get out. The Jews that were there before 48, according to these Palestinians, have a right to stay. I mean, my own opinion is there's nothing solved trying to get people out. Another expulsion is not going to help anything. The issue is people's rights.
Right, but I think, that's kind of getting sidetracked in the sense of, I think we're talking about a journalist who, up to this point, was celebrated for speaking her mind in a lot of places, of course, villainized by some because she stepped on toes. But to have the ouster after, there's been people who said far, far worse, who I haven't seen an ouster, whether it's the Pat Robertsons or the Mel Gibsons or, and any number of people that you can see on stages at, war rallies. And I even shouldn't say the word worse or, or anything like that, but they've spoken out pretty forcefully on the issue and very definitively of where they stood and why her. And I'm wondering if it's because she is a journalist, and whereas an activist says that you can write it off, well, that's just a kooky activist, but somebody who's a journalist gives it a lot more weight and a lot more credibility. And is that do you think that's the reason why they
Yeah.
came after her?
Yeah, for sure. She sits in the front row of the White House press conferences, and there's not. I think that's fair enough. I mean, it's not the same as an actor mouthing off. That is a prestigious position in the front row of the White House press gallery, and if somebody was a really virulent racist, I think it would be an issue. There's no evidence she is. She made one comment in the context of everything else she's ever said about Israel, and U.S. policy towards Israel has been a political statement about U.S. policy towards nuclear weapons, to the unequal treatment. I don't know of any evidence where she has ever said anything that could be defined as racist before this. And even this, like I said, I wrote this blog today. I said, well, if Native Americans said, "All you bloody Europeans, go home," I don't think there'd be such outrage, but it's not that dissimilar a situation. Yeah, Jews have a long-term connection to that area, but only the ones that were living there. The ones that came afterwards do not. You can't define this as if because there's some biblical connection, or even a Jewish population prior to 48, that everyone that comes afterwards absolutely has a right. So it's what she said. I don't agree with, but it's not so outrageous, frankly. And two, look who's attacking her. The former Bush press secretary, who was an apologist for the killing of perhaps 1 million Iraqis. The former Clinton press secretary, who was hired just recently by the Honduran equivalent of the Honduran Chamber of Commerce, to defend an illegal coup and a government that's now killing journalists and political activists. These are the people who are being quoted in press all over the country that helped lead to Helen Thomas's, I assume, forced retirement. But it's okay to defend an illegal coup. It's okay to defend an illegal war. And you make her comment, that's what everyone's going to get excited about? This is all about you can't allow, they can't allow even a crack in the armor, which is you can't talk realistically about Israel.
Well, that's the point. As a journalist, when she says it, um, then you have to make the example. So, do you think with her being gone, does that send a chill to anybody else in the press corps? Should they be worried that somebody's going to try to lead an attack? Does this embolden them, or should we be digging in the sands and standing up and maybe even being more critical, just to make the point?
Well, I think it's both. I think one, yeah, I think there's already a tremendous chill in mainstream newsrooms on this topic of Israel, and yeah, I think the object of this, and it will get worse. And I think it's terrible if the Hearst chain, in fact, did push her into this retirement. I can't say for sure they did, but it sure looks that
Well,
way.
it's not that.
It's
She
terrible.
also lost speaking engagements, and I think she was dropped from a speakers bureau.
Yeah.
So obviously the claws were out and people went. Um, is that just fair game in terms of, when you speak, these may be the consequences, as a journalist, because you may rub people the wrong way. And should we as journalists be concerned about that, or do we have to really measure our words based upon the political climate that exists?
Well, I don't think we should, which is why we're building an independent news network. But I think the behavior of the White House press corps now and in the past towards Helen Thomas has been outrageous. She's the dean of the White House press corps. She sits in the front row. And because the last president and this president don't like the kind of questions she asks, she never gets called upon. Like her first question to Obama was about nuclear weapons in the Middle East. He didn't like the question. I'm not sure she's actually had another question since from Obama. The press corps says nothing. That one of their leading members never gets a question. I think it's outrageous. And today, apparently the National Press Gallery Association disassociated themselves from her and talked about how joined the course against her. It's all out of proportion, and it's all about the same thing, that it's sacrilegious to touch the Israeli topic. And yeah, if you're asking me, journalists better stand up, because it's only going to get worse if we don't stand up now, which is why I wrote that blog today.
I had a discussion, we're talking with Paul Jay from Real News Network, about the retirement or forced retirement of Helen Thomas, the dean of the White House press corps, over her remarks about Israel and the Middle East. I've been working in the music business for 25 years up to now, and over the years, I've seen people be bounced off radio stations because they said something about an artist. And because we have so much money that gets exchanged on the commercial side, um, somebody's able to pick up a phone and, like, I don't like what this jock said, and they're either silenced or they're told to leave, depending on really the degree that the stations, the label heads want. Um, I bring this up because oftentimes we talk about news is objective, people are just there to report and all this other stuff. And I've always made the case that, especially in mainstream media now, it's all about dollars and cents, and what those clients who are paying those dollars and cents want. The music industry being more of a canary in the coal mine, but obviously it goes on in so many things. I mean, I remember my old boss, telling me, look, Nike just paid $500,000 for commercials, and we need to have Phil Knight on to defend and talk about why they have sweatshops. And here's the list of questions to ask them. No, that was it. That was going to be the report. So with that being said, how is this any different, with the call for her head than what some of these people that are much more that we would say are egregious in their actions? How's that any different?
Well, I guess it's not. The only difference here is that what's at stake. I mean, I think it's terrible people got bounced off of music shows, but what's at stake here is one of the tiny handful of journalists who would speak truthfully, or try to speak as truthfully as she can at any rate, without being intimidated, about one of the most critical foreign policies of our time. What you said earlier is true. This is going to be more chill. What's at stake is more chill in all the newsrooms. And if journalists don't stand up right now and say no to this and start having an honest, realistic conversation about the politics of the Middle East, then we're back into a new kind of McCarthyism, and maybe we already are more than halfway there.
But we thought we escaped that with Bush. But here we are under Obama, and the chill is, well, that's pretty chilling. I mean, should he be stepping out and saying something?
Of course he should. He should be doing a lot more.
But he's not.
No, his press secretary Gibbs came out and attacked Helen Thomas. They joined the chorus.
What is somebody like you who has your own network, or some of the other ones that are around, maybe a Democracy Now or something like that, do they go out and pick up a Helen Thomas?
Yeah, I'm going to call her tonight. Her desk is on the cell. We work out of the office, same office as she does. So I'm going to. We'll try to find her when she's cleaning at her desk and see if she wants a new gig.
Seriously, I think we should.
Oh, I'm being very serious.
So there you have it. Next steps, Paul.
Next steps in terms of what?
What we should be doing.
Well, I think everybody should start writing like mad. They should write the White House press corps. They should write the Hearst newspaper chain. They should get into the op-ed sections. There's two issues here. Whether you agree with what she said or don't. And I actually don't disagree with the specificity of this statement. I don't think all Jews or all Israelis should leave. But that being aside, I do agree with much of her overall critique of the situation. But most importantly, I absolutely disagree with the fact she's being hounded out of her job for saying just because she spoke.
When, if I remember the quote, she said they should leave Palestine, and I'm thinking more the settlers. There is that something that is not fair for the critique or even the remark when people say I don't think there should be settlers there,
Yeah.
and that's been long, discussed, and people have condemned that, for as long as I can remember. Why is it any different if she does it?
It's not clear from what she said whether she meant settlers or not. She did say they're occupiers, and you can kind of define the occupation in two different ways. Most people are actually calling the occupation now post 67 borders and the settlements, so it's possible that's what she meant. It's possible she meant more than that. I don't know, and part of the problem is it was just some guy shoving a video camera in front of her face. As soon as he got some quote that he thought he could use against her, he took off and shoved it on the web and never asked her any clarifying questions to find out what she really meant, because his objective wasn't to find out what she really meant. His objective was to try to bring down Helen Thomas, and he got away with something here. I don't know which one she meant, but we should be able to include that in any rational discourse without people going hysterical.
But we kind of do based upon her past record and what she said before in the past. She's not a very stupid person, so we would think that her remarks, even if emotional, would be based upon a precedent that she set in terms of her critique.
I would guess so, but I'm a journalist, so I don't mind waiting to find out what she really meant. And I hope, what I'm going to do is talk to her as soon as I can and interview her and see if we can't find out what she really meant.
Well, there you have it. We're out for now. We've been talking to Paul J, Real News Network, and you can catch the website is
TheRealNews.com.
there you go. We're out for now. Peace.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much, my friend.